This one's gonna be tough. So tonight's film is The Evil Dead from 2013. I don't know necessarily whether to call it a remake, a reboot. I don't know, because it kind of has elements of both. Basically, the original Evil Dead took place back in the 80s, stars a character named Ash and a group of his friends that go up to this cabin for the weekend to kind of get away. They find a book that they read a passage from, and it basically summons evil that comes and attacks them, starts possessing people, and then those possessed people attack the other people. This movie, kind of similar concept. A group of kids are getting together. There's a bunch of friends and a brother and a sister within the group who are getting together because the sister has a drug problem, and they figure out here in the middle of nowhere we can get her to detox, go cold turkey, get over that initial detox, and then we can continue like getting her help and getting her clean and sober. One of the guys named Eric finds a book that is, well, he finds basically a trash bag that has barbed wire wrapped around it, and he ends up cutting it open and pulling the barbed wire off and realizing that it's a book, and ends up reading from the book, and it's just dumb. Like, if you find just a creepy book and there's like creepy writing all over it, and it says don't read it, don't write it, don't say it, obviously you have to say it. So he says, he basically, it's like scratched out and stuff like that, but he kind of does like the old school, like Dakota wrote the pencil over it and reads the phrase and basically unveils evil to this scenario now. There's a lot of similarities between the original and this one, which I'll kind of get to later on. This movie is hardcore. It has all the elements of a great horror movie, in my opinion. You've got the kind of just eerie overtone of the whole film, a very dark-scaped kind of area. The movie starts really like bright and sunny the first day they're there, and then that first night things kind of get crazy, and then it starts raining, and from that point on it's just like super dark-scaped eerie. Like, it's very gray overtones. The inside of the cabin is very old and worn, and it's very dim in the cabin and stuff like that. The soundtrack for it, or like the score and the sound effects for just like the music, really, really fit, but really, really change. Like, it gets so loud at some points. And I just recently got a pair of the Samsung Galaxy Buds Live. Hashtag not sponsored, but please sponsor me. And so I decided tonight I would try them out and use those to watch my movie. Sometimes I'll watch my movie in the front room using the surround sound and the big TV. Sometimes I watch it here in my office where I have a 55-inch TV and a sound bar, but a lot of the times I end up using my headphones because my wife is watching TV in the front room. But tonight I tried these bad boys out, and I was real impressed. They are really, really good. They actually sound better than my over-the-ear headphones that I've been using, which are just HyperCloud gaming headset, but I've just been using the headphone aspect. But the changes in volume were so extreme. Like, it would get so like over the top loud and then like super eerie quiet. And then super over the top loud and then eerie quiet. And I know that is purposely done with this film, so it's kind of cool to experience it with headphones, knowing that if you watched it, and I have seen this movie before in the past, I watched it in theaters, I've seen it 2 or 3 times since then. Watching it even with like a surround sound or something like that, there's going to be those drastic changes, so don't try to watch this in the middle of the night if you have people sleeping in the house. It's not going to work out. The other thing about this movie is just how brutal it is. Like, straight up brutal. I said in the past, in a couple of videos ago, I don't remember which video even it was specifically, but I mentioned that my biggest, like, get under my skin, like, ghosts, demons, all that kind of stuff doesn't really affect me too much. But it's the real stuff that gets to me. Like, physical harm to, like, a human body. And, like, gunshots and, like, broken bones, like, okay, like, sure, that doesn't really bug me. But this is, like, brutal, hardcore stuff. Things are about to get real graphic. The sister basically becomes possessed by this evil. She gets violated, to put it lightly, in the woods by a tree, which sounds weird, but it's just what happens. And she kind of passes on that evil, like, spirit bug infection, if you will, to another girl named Olivia, who is kind of like the nurse doctor person in this group, by just spewing just this, like, kind of bloody stomach acid stuff, like, just all into, like, her face and her mouth, and she's basically like, holding down, like, basically straddling her and just puking straight into her face. and it transfers into Olivia, and Olivia ends up succumbing to the evil and takes a piece of glass from a mirror and just, why so serious, and just starts carving her face, and it's just all tore up, and like her teeth are hanging out, and it's super gory. And then David ends up finding her, like, and starts freaking out, like, what are you doing? And then he starts backing away once he realizes what happened, and he slips and falls, and Olivia takes a syringe and just starts pounding it into his face. The needle of the syringe, like, stabbing him in, like, the head and stuff like that, which wasn't too rough, but I mean, just like, oh god, that would hurt. And then takes a piece of glass and crams it into, like, his chest, kind of shoulder area. And then he ends up taking, like, a piece of the sink that broke, or a piece of, like the lid for the toilet water reservoir, and just bashing her head in, and it's just so gory. And that theme really continues throughout the film. And I really want to talk about specifically Eric. This guy is the Energizer Bunny, the little engine that could, whatever you want to say about him. So he gets stabbed in the face with a syringe multiple times. He takes a piece of glass, like a pretty big sized piece of glass, into his shoulder arm. Later on in the film, he gets shot 4 times in the arm with a nail gun, and they penetrate through. You see them sticking out the other side 4 times because he tries to block it. And it just, like, oh gosh, it just gets to me. And then, again, another scene, like, in that same little dispute of the movie, he's sitting up against the wall, and the person with the nail gun, which is one of the demon things, possessed people, starts pointing it at him and shoots 11 more times, and the whole time he's, like, blocking it, and he ends up getting his hand stuck to his chest with a nail through it, like, straight Jesus status, and then, like, has to, like, pull the nail out to free his arm. So this guy's got, like, 13, 14 nails in his body, and doesn't die. And then that same person that attacked him ends up hitting him in the head with a crowbar, like, 3 or 4 times, and, like, there's, like, blood, like, dripping down his head and stuff like that, and I'm like, this dude's dead. And turns out he's not dead. He continues going. And I think finally, what finally does him in later in the film is he gets stabbed in the stomach, torso, like, lower belly area with a box knife. So, like, this dude just goes the distance and just gets taken through the ringer of pain. Something that I thought was kind of humorous about this was duct tape for everything. That's their answer for all of it. So when they pull a shard of glass out of Eric's chest, duct tape. You're fine. Everything's good. One of the girls ends up getting bit by Mia right here. The infection, or, like, possession, if you will, starts going through her hand, and her hand starts, like, doing all this weird stuff, and then it starts moving up her arm, and she's losing control of that, and she starts, like, tweaking out, like, basically becoming possessed, and then, like, comes back to like, a clear mind and sees that her hand is still doing its thing. So she takes a freaking kitchen, like, meat carver, like the thing that you'd use to carve a turkey, like the electronic, like, plug-in one, and just saws through, just holds it down and just starts cutting through, and blood just squirting and flying everywhere. And it was just so gross. And the sound effects, so legit. Like, when Olivia's cutting her face open, just like the creepy, like, skin flapping noise with, like, liquid. Oh, it's so good, but so bad. Like, it's so well done. Like, it really is well done, but it just kind of, like, gets to my skin. Oh, and one thing that happened to Eric that I forgot to mention that really just, I had to pause the movie. Like, it's not often that I pause the movie because I'm just like, oh god, why? Like, ugh. Is he goes to, she's beating him with the crowbar, and he tries to block it, and she swings at him and ends up just splitting his hand right here, and you can see, like, his, like, 3 fingers over here just dangle, and I'm just like, oh, my soul. The movie's just an insane, gory, creepy. There's a few jump scares that are actually pretty good, 1 or 2 that actually got me this time, and again, I've seen this film before, but it's been well over a year. This isn't one that I watch super often just because of how much I enjoy it. I don't want to watch it really constantly and kind of lose that feeling to it, you know? Just keeps going, and it doesn't stop, and it doesn't let up. Like, it starts really hardcore. Like, at the very beginning of the movie, you're like instantly introduced to the evil within a girl and how they kind of dealt with the evil by burning her alive, and her basically saying like, I'll swallow your soul kind of thing as she's burning, and then like getting shot in the head with a shotgun and just exploding her head. It just keeps going. Like, it does not stop. Going on to a spoiler zone. The whole ripping the hand off thing under the Jeep really, really gets to me. And if you're watching this, even though you haven't seen the movie, you shouldn't be watching the spoiler zone. But to fill you in, a demon, like the demon that gets summoned basically by killing 5 people and everybody dies, flips a Jeep over and it lands on Mia's hand, and she's pinned and she's trying to get away, and she's trying to reach for the chainsaw, but she can't get it. It's just like barely out of arm's reach. So she just pushes against the hood of or like the roof of the Jeep with her hands and her feet and just rips her hand off. And it's just still under there, and like you can see it like shredding the skin and like the muscle and everything. Like, oh, it was just so rough. Like, yeah, this movie gets me in the greatest way ever. Just the whole like Slayer raining blood scene. It's just all so well done. The movie, this version that I watched, the movie ends with Mia basically after everybody's dead. She's killed the main demon thing. She's kind of just chilling with one hand missing, holding it up. And the sun comes out and she starts walking away. And then the credits roll. And after the credits, if you stay, there's a little secret kind of Easter egg from Bruce Campbell himself. But another version that I have seen in the past, it doesn't end right there with Mia basically just walking away from the cabin. It actually ends with her walking down a road and there's just blood dripping behind her and stuff like that. And she ends up basically collapsing, and right as she does, a truck pulls up and some guy helps her and basically rescues her, which is kind of the, okay, she makes it and lives that they wanted. Like, for a lot of, like I said, with a lot of horror movies, there's very much the decent kind of whatever intro, the build up, the main event, and then that happy little, everything's okay, this is fine now. But something that I have read in the past was that Sam Raimi was the one that called that ending. He wanted her to live because it was originally wrote that after all this was said and done, she was going to levitate, basically become possessed and start doing the twitching, contorting thing, and then levitate up in the air, which has happened in the older movies, but hadn't happened at all in this movie. Nobody levitated. There wasn't any of that kind of mystical stuff to these possessed people. But basically, they were going to have her levitate up in the air and then have her put her arms out, basically, and then just have her just explode. What they originally said they wanted to do was basically make it to where it seemed like kind of that old school, I don't really want to say torture necessarily because it basically kills you, but where they tie you to like 4 different horses and then have each horse run in a different direction and just rip you apart. And that's kind of what they wanted to do, and then have that boom credits roll. But Sam Raimi was like, no, it'd probably be better if she lived because of how much she's been through in this film, which I kind of don't agree with, but I get why he did that because it's going to appeal to more people. For me, that would have been an awesome ending to this because that's basically this whole story just encapsulated in this one thing. You have the start and you have the finish, and it's all boom. Versus now, Mia's still alive. She's missing a hand. She knows about everything that's happened. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that they did it on purpose because they want to throw a sequel in the future. I don't know. But for this movie, 10 stars. Duh. I mean, I'm a little biased. Army of Darkness was one of my favorite movies as a kid and still is to this day. Later on, as I got a little bit older, I found out that The Evil Dead was a thing. I had only seen Army of Darkness because my grandfather showed me, and it was just a movie we enjoyed watching. And then I watched the original Evil Dead 2, and then realized that kind of plays into the whole story. This one just is so well done. And even though it has nothing to do with Bruce Campbell, who I just adore, in and of itself, again, as a little like enclosed capsule movie, this is just a phenomenal time. Like, I've got nothing negative to say to it. It creeps me out. It gets under my skin. It's super gory. It's kind of humorous in a little bit in some scenes. And it's just super, super well done. Like, absolutely check this movie out. The Evil Dead, the 2013 version. The original, I think, was like 80 83, 81, something, somewhere in the early 80s. I'd have to double check that. And that'll probably end up on this list at some point this month because that's another one that I love watching. So I couldn't make a long enough video about this, like straight up. Definitely check this out. I mean, even if you've never heard of Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Bruce Campbell, any of that, this is just a solid horror film through and through. Watch it. That was weird.